How is it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Ethan Bridge. I'm host of the Social Media Marketing School podcast and the guy behind the Instagram page at The Marketing Ethan. Now, if you've been listening to all of this week's podcast episodes, you would have recognized a recent theme. I've been talking a little bit about branding, and this is something that I want to introduce more into this podcast because I believe it plays a huge part of social media marketing. Your brand is your reputation, and if you are building a brand on social media, you need to think about your branding, pretty much. So I've been talking about branding, and today I wanted to talk about some key branding lessons. So without any further ado, let's just dive straight into the first point, and that is you have been branding ever since you started, whether you like it or not. With your brand being your reputation, every move you make, every post you create, every topic you talk about, you're building your brand. Now you may be thinking, right, I did this, I did that, I picked those colors. Yeah, sure, they are elements of your brand, but your messaging, the way you've created your post, the style you speak in, the stories you're posting, the picture you are building for yourself, whether you like it or not, the day you started posting on social media, the day you started building your business, you have been building your brand. It's a continuous process from start to finish. It doesn't start when you decide to post your first Instagram post or when you decide to implement some brand colors. It starts from day one. It starts from that first email. It starts from when you first decide you want to build that business and what you want to do with it, what products you want to sell, what service you want to provide, the messaging behind your business, the values. All of this encompasses into your brand, and whether you like it or not, from day one, that's what you've been doing. You've been building a brand. Now, if you want to shift that and you want to change it, you can. You can pivot. You don't have to stay on this same trajectory because that's what you've been doing since day one. The beauty of business, the beauty of branding is that you can rebrand. You can take a pivot. You can take a different road, and that can allow you to provide that different messaging. So if you think about what you've done previously and you haven't realized that you've been branding all this time, you may want to reconsider. You may want to think, I don't necessarily agree with what I've been doing beforehand. I want to pivot. I want to change. You can do that. But if you want to continue with what you've been doing and develop and evolve from what you've already been doing, great. Continue. Get more technical with it. Get deeper. Understand what you actually want to build and go from there. But the one thing I wanted to tell you is, whether you like it or not, you've been branding. You have been. Every single post you've created, you may not have created anything yet, but everything you've done from day one to do with your business, to do with your personal brand, you've been branding. The next point I want to make is that your marketing will not work without branding. And to explain, I'm going to talk a little bit about Apple. Apple is arguably one of the most famous, if not the most famous technology brand in the world at the moment, and has been for quite some time. But the reason Apple is so powerful and sells the amount of products it does is because of the brand it has built. No matter if there's a new iPhone, new iMac, new MacBook, new iPad, people are going to buy it. Now, if you look at the iPhone in particular, on paper and statistically speaking, that iPhone is not the best smartphone on the market. It's not. I'm an Apple fanboy and I can admit that. I've got an iPhone, but that's because I love Apple. I don't particularly love the iPhone and the technicalities behind it and the internal components. I love Apple, and I understand that. I love the brand, and that's the reason I've bought the iPhone. If I wanted the best smartphone on the market, I probably wouldn't have bought the iPhone. But the brand Apple has built has influenced me to buy that iPhone regardless of the specifications and the technicalities behind the phone. Now you might be thinking, okay, so how does this relate to the point? Why will marketing not work without branding? Let's see Apple as if it had no branding. Apple was just this random rock bottom low-level tech company that had no brand at all. They weren't this worldwide renowned company. If they were to market the iPhone, nobody would buy it. Because on paper, simply put, as I mentioned, it's not the best smartphone. With their laptops as well, with their MacBooks, if they were to market them and they didn't have the brand they have, they wouldn't sell any. Because the brand isn't there. People would want to go and build their own computers, their own PCs, because then they could get every single component they wanted and make it the most powerful PC on the planet. Apple computers, Apple iPhones, they aren't the best products on paper, but people still buy them because of the brand Apple have built. So their marketing would not work if they didn't have the brand they have built. And this goes for any brand. This goes for any company. This goes for any product or service. If you haven't got the brand behind your product, then you wouldn't sell anything. So in my opinion, the key is to focus on building a killer brand, not a killer product. Because if you can build a killer brand, build a brand that's bigger than the product you sell, no matter the product you end up selling, people are going to buy it. So if you then spend a ton of money on marketing, it will work and have a greater return because your brand is better. So the better your brand is, the bigger your brand is, the more influential your brand is, you are going to see a direct return, a direct increase in the return you are spending on your marketing because your branding is more powerful. But if you didn't have that brand there in the first place, your marketing wouldn't work at all. So to round up the rant and put the point into place, your marketing will not work without branding. Simple as that. Point number 3, and this one will be a ranty point. Your brand isn't just a logo and a website. It baffles me how many people think they can throw a website together, pick a logo, and they've got a brand. That is not what branding is. Branding goes below so many different levels. That is simply the surface level. Your brand colours, your website, your logo, this is what people can see. But it goes so much deeper than that. Your brand encompasses everything you do. Your brand is your reputation. It's your messaging. It's the way you interact with your customers. It's your customer service. It's your personality. It's your voice. It pretty much encompasses everything you do as a business. But for some reason, many people think they've got a brand as soon as they've put a website and a logo together. And it's not the case. If you just put a website and a logo together and then you start advertising, you still won't sell anything because, like I said, your marketing will not work without a brand. So you have to think much deeper. You have to think about your core values. You have to think about your messaging. You have to think about your personality. You have to think about your vision. You have to think about your goals, because all of these different things are what build up your brand. They are the deeper things that the outside world cannot see. Yes, obviously, your website is important, your logo is important, your brand colour is important, because it's the visualization of your brand. That's what people do see, but that's not it. You have to think below surface level and think about the things that people can't see, because then they all come together to build your brand. You have to think about everything. You can't just think about the website and the logo. You could have the best website and logo in the world and still sell nothing. I want you guys to search something on Google. Just search the branding iceberg, because if you didn't know, when you look at an iceberg, you can only see the tip of it above the surface level of the water. But when you actually look below the water, the majority of that iceberg, a huge proportion of that iceberg, is actually below the surface. And this is similar with branding, and that's why they call it the branding iceberg. What people see is your logo, your brand colours, the content you produce, your website. But when you look below the surface level, the majority of your branding is what people actually can't see. And it's like with an iceberg, you can only see the tip, the visual things above the surface, when in reality, the main points, the main part of that iceberg is below the surface level of the water. You just can't see it. So don't think when you've got a website and a logo, you've got a brand, because you haven't. You have to think about everything else. Now, the final point I want to mention, I do want to mention it very quickly, is that direction is more important than the speed at which you do things. When you are branding, when you are building a company, don't think about just making a quick buck, making a quick sale, because that will damage you long term. A brand is for life. A brand is something you want to build and hold and grow exponentially throughout the years until you stop doing so, essentially. And for me, that would be when I decide I want to retire or settle down or want to take a step back from business, which in my opinion could be way down the line because I love it so much. But if I'm just out there to make a quick buck, I will rush things. I won't think about the vision. I won't think about the direction. And this is where a lot of people make mistakes. They are solely focused on the money and how quickly they can make it. And that's only going to damage your longevity. That's only going to damage that long-term vision. The direction of the brand you want to build, where you want to get to, that long-term vision is far more important than the amount of money you are making in the short term. Because when you build a brand, when you build something that's really successful, when you build something that everybody wants to be a part of, in the long term, the money will come. And it will come in a big way when you build a brand in the right manner. And it will come exponentially throughout the years. Yeah, for the first 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, you may not make a lot of money. But the 10, 20, 30 after that, when you've done everything the right way, are going to be huge in comparison to if you had rushed to just get everything done so that you could get money in the short term. Sure, in the short term, you may have been well off and had a little bit more money than if you took things slow. But long term, you will make nowhere near as much as money because you aren't building something that people want to be a part of long term, continue to buy from, return to, share with their friends. They don't want to be a part of that because you have rushed it. They may just buy your product once and move on. Cool, you made a little bit of money, but you don't want that. You want something that's bigger than the products you sell. You want something that people want to be a part of and will buy your products no matter what product you sell. And to do that, you have to build a solid brand. You have to have that long-term direction rather than focusing on the speed at which you do it. And that wraps up 4 key branding lessons that I wanted to share with you. So just to wrap up what I did mention, I will mention the points again. Point number 1, you have been branding whether you like it or not. From day one, that's when you started branding. You can shift, don't worry, but think about what you have already done because that is a reputation that you've began building yourself. You have already began building that brand, even if you didn't know it. Number 2, your marketing will not work without a brand. And I gave a really good example about Apple. So if you want to recap on that, make sure you go back and listen to that point again. Number 3, branding is more than just a logo and a website. Google the branding iceberg. Your logo, your website, your brand colors, these are the visual things. These are the things people can see. But the majority of your branding, the important parts of your branding, are the things that people can't see, the things that lie below the surface. And they are the things that you need to focus on as well as that logo and that website. And the final point, direction and longevity is more important than speed. Do not just look at the money in the short term, because in the long term, if you focus on the direction and are doing it slowly and doing it right, you will make far more money than that short-term return that you would have made if you rushed things. And that does wrap up today's video. If you did enjoy, I would really appreciate if you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button and turned on post notifications. That way you will never miss a video when I post one. But if you did enjoy, I did just want to mention that this is a part of my podcast series, Social Media Marketing School, and the audio version of the podcast is the place to be because I release this content a lot sooner over there than I do here on YouTube. So I'll leave some links in the description below. Make sure you are heading down there and subscribing. But if you've got any questions with regards to anything that I've mentioned, please just reach out to me on Instagram at @themarketingethan. Send me a DM and I'll make sure I get back to you no matter what. But if you have made it to this point in the video, I just want to finish off by saying thank you for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one.